Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Garbhajana Prabhu, can you please read the Sanskrit version? This is Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 7, Science of God, Chapter 6. Prahlada instructs his demonic schoolmates. Text 2. Yadha, in order that he, indeed, Purushasya, of a living entity, Iha, here, Viṣṇu, of Lord Viṣṇu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Pada Upasapranam, approaching the lotus feet, Yat, because, Eshaha, this, Sarva Bhutanam, of all living entities, Priyaha, the dear one, Atma Ishvaraha, the master of the soul, the super soul, Suhrit, the best well-wisher and friend. Now the translation of this text. The human form of life affords one a chance to return home, back to Godhead. Therefore, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in devotional service to the lotus feet of Lord Viṣṇu. This devotional service is natural because Lord Viṣṇu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the most beloved, the master of the soul, and the well-wisher of all other living beings. See, this is quite hard to understand what it says here. You should be on a high level to realize it. On a material level, it's impossible to understand. Why? Because a living entity goes through triple sufferings. He is under these three types of miseries. You can say that a material consciousness is a consciousness of miseries. All the time we realize some discomfort and we go along this path. We stay active along this path, not because we are happy. It's for the other, quite another reason. And while the person isn't under these triple miseries, it is very hard for him to understand what it is said here. That the Lord is the friend of all living entities, that there is some bliss that exists eternally, and the person, of course, does not realize what it is, where it is. Where is this bliss that I have to fight for my existence all my life? I have to support my body, take care of my relatives. There are always some miseries, some warnings. I always have to make an effort to survive, to make it in this world. It's really difficult. And it becomes more and more difficult as you grow older. You make more and more mistakes. You get entangled in this material world. And you lose faith in some kind of a perfect spiritual atmosphere, idealized atmosphere. People think that this is an idealized thing to even think about God. They think that God either doesn't exist or does not have the power to liberate us from all these sufferings and lead us. An ordinary person has a lot of doubt just because he's under the influence of all these three types of miseries. External conditions should be overcome as well, and you have to associate with other living entities And it's not easy even to find a common language with myself. But here it says that if you're born a human, you get a chance to go back to Godhead, to enter quite another atmosphere. Prabhupada says, go back home. This is our home, our initial position, our spiritual position. So you get a chance to go back to that initial position. Therefore, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in devotional service to the lotus feet of Lord Viṣṇu. See, it says especially humans, even living entities that don't have developed consciousness. So everybody should go back home, especially humans. It depends on the atmosphere in the society. You know, the other living entities, they benefit from the behavior of people. So nowadays, nature does not get a lot of benefit from the people's behavior. It's more about stress. Plants, animals, birds, and the person himself only gets stress out of living in this society. That's why it says here, especially humans. If humans live in bliss, everyone else will benefit, all the other living entities will benefit. So we have to associate with sages, we have to have sadhusanga, bhaja kriya also, and we have to understand that this is a benediction for our family, for all my relatives. So we must serve God, and it all depends on me. All the bliss of all the other living beings surrounding us, they all depend on us. That's the purpose of our life. Nowadays we see that it's really hard to carry this responsibility even for our own life. We usually wait until someone or something happens and I gain what I need, because I cannot do it myself. I'm not strong enough. I cannot organize my life. I cannot take on this responsibility because I don't have this knowledge and confidence, and I doubt. Deep down in my heart, I keep doubting. But what if something happens and I will change my life? So this is exactly what happens to all the other people. Some other people, they do not even think about it. They don't even hope for anything. Shastras teach us to think about other living entities. And we are trying to get this consciousness that the Lord is a friend, it's a close friend to all the living beings, and we try to gain this consciousness. So this devotional service is natural because Lord Viṣṇu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the most beloved, the master of the soul, and the well-wisher of all other living beings. You see how this natural world, I mean, the world, the nature changes under the influence of people's activities. So look, there's an example. We've got a fly living here in the kitchen. And of course, this fly eats prasadam. It may not know what prasadam is, but its qualities change right in front of our eyes. Right now, we can actually rub this fly on its head, and it's not afraid. So you see, the nature is totally innocent. But in other cases, if there's no prasadam, if there's no the existence of spiritual energy, living entities are afraid of each other. Even people are afraid of each other, especially when it's dark and you have to pass through some place and there's someone following you. You always start being worried. You don't know who the person is following you. We know that it's not good
Всякие люди бывают, ужасные люди бывают,
to
жуткие люди бывают.
walk down the street when it's dark.
Защитников мало сейчас. Пройдут мимо или
There are
убегут,
no
и никому никакого дела
defenders
не будет.
these days. They will not probably even notice
Это настроение,
you.
оно есть у
So we have
человека,
this
страх
set of mind.
пронизывает. И другие
We
живые
are all
существа
pierced by
тоже
fear,
пронизаны
and
таким
all
страхом.
other living beings, they're
Ну
also
вот вы кормите, просадом,
pierced
просто кормите
by this
просадом
fear.
людей.
So you just feed
Животные что-то
people,
получают,
animals
даже
with
насекомые
prasadam,
мы не знаем, но они
even
тоже
insects.
получают. И
They also get
посмотрите,
this
они
benefit.
меняются очень быстро.
You see, they
Те люди,
change
которые
in front
ели
of your
просад,
eyes.
или те
People
животные,
that
собаки,
used to
ели
eat
просад,
prasadam
они
animals,
меняются характер прямо на глазах, сразу же вы видите.
their personalities
То
change.
есть все занимаются
Visually, you
преданным
can see
служением.
it, because everyone's
И
doing devotional
от
service.
человека это получают.
And
Поэтому
they all
долг человека
get
быть
it
в сознании
from,
Кришны, если мы хотим вообще
from
как-то
the
жить
people. So our
счастливо в этом
duty
мире. И как
is to do
изменить
it in
мир,
this world
говорит,
if you want to be happy.
нужно обрести сознание Кришны.
So we have to
Человек.
get Krishna's
И все так или
consciousness.
иначе, прямо или косвенно будут заняты
And
преданным
this or
служением.
other way, everyone
А
will
это
be
что
engaged in
означает?
devotional
Означает
service.
одухотворение.
And that means that
Любое
everything will
живое
be
существо — частичка
spiritualized.
Бога, говорится.
Every
Все
living being
склонны
is a part of God.
по своей природе служить Господу.
Everybody
Все,
is
абсолютно каждое живое
inclined
существо.
by
И
their
для
nature to
человека, который еще
serve
не осознал
God.
Кришну,
And for the person that
ему
hasn't
говорят, что он
realized
должен
Krishna
служить
yet,
старшим,
he said that he has to serve
или ходить,
the elders,
поклоняться в храм,
the seniors, or go to
видеть
temple,
представителей
do some
Бога,
worshipping, see the
отличать добрых
representatives of
людей, да,
God,
уважать
differentiate
святых
good
браманов,
people from evil ones,
то есть или выполнять свой долг перед
associate with
обществом.
Brahmins,
Вот
or
такие наставления
carry
даются,
his duty
чтобы человек тоже неосознанно
before the
одухотворился.
society.
В нем
And this
развиваться
person,
хорошее
even
качество. Даже если он не
unconsciously,
осознает
will
Бога,
get
в нем уже будет
spiritualized.
развиваться хорошее
Even if he
качество.
doesn't realize God
И
yet, his
особенно важно, конечно,
good
иметь таких
qualities
сознающих
will be
Бога
developing.
людей,
And of course,
сознающих
it's
Кришну
good to have
полностью,
in our society
ведущих свою жизнь уже
people
осознанно.
that
А в
realize
основном
who God
люди
is
уже
and His
не
position.
неосознанно могут. Агьята
Because
сукрити, они
mostly we see people that
могут не
are not
понимать эти
consciousness
отношения с Богом,
enough, are not
куча
conscious.
сомнений.
They do not know who
Они
God
еще
is. They have a
мошенники,
whole lot of
негодяи,
doubts.
пожадники, у них то есть плохие качества еще есть какие-то,
They're
но
still
неосознанно.
rascals. They still
Агьята
have a lot of
сукрити,
negative
каждый человек может служить Кришне.
features of character, but
Просто покупая книгу на
subconsciously,
улице,
every person can serve to
или
Krishna,
немножко
even by just
задумываясь,
buying a book
прочитав шлоку
out on the
какую-то, или
street,
получив
or having
просада,
read one shloka
или
and start
помочь
contemplating on
преданному
it,
служению какому-то преданному, может быть,
or help
финансами или
some
физически,
devotee even financially or physically,
по своей как бы простоте душевной. А это уже неосознанное
just by the
благочестивое
simplicity of
действие,
your
они
soul.
как-то приближаются к Богу.
So this is
И
already
атмосфера
brings
как бы
us
она уже
closer to God.
меняется.
This
Поэтому здесь говорится
atmosphere
все
starts
живые
changing.
существа, независимо от их
So it says
интеллектуального
here,
развития
all
или
living
эволюционного
beings,
развития, могут
not
быть
dependent on their
связаны с
intellectual
Богом.
or
Как
evolutionary
это? Ну, это искусство
development.
уже варнаши, мадхармы.
How
Браманы
to
это
do
хорошо
it?
знают, должны
It's an
очень
art
хорошо
to do it.
понимать.
Brahmins, they
Мы
know how
должны
to do
понять,
it.
что браманы, если
They
мы браманы,
understand how to do it. If
они
it's a
заботятся
Brahman,
только о человеческом обществе.
they don't
Иначе
just
это не
care
браманы.
about the
Конечно,
society of
прежде всего о
people.
человеческом обществе.
Otherwise, it's
Но
not
браман
a
вообще это
Brahman.
такой, это высокого уровня, живет в
So
лесу,
Brahman lives in the
общается
forest.
с живыми
He
существами. Там,
associates with all the living beings there.
там он находится в сознании Кришны, даже в такой атмосфере
There
неземных
he's in
людей.
the
Мы живем
Krishna's
среди преданных,
consciousness.
да, вот это наше
So
сознание
we
Кришны.
live
Но если мы уйдем в лес, мы можем ослабнуть духовно. Не
surrounded by
сможем понять, как там
devotees,
развиваться
but if you go to forest,
птицам,
we will not understand how to
или с
develop
животными, которые там живут, с оленями.
Krishna's consciousness
Но
there
Браман,
among
он
deers
видит
and bears and other animals. With Brahman, he sees the
он
soul
может даже находясь
everywhere.
в уединении, осознавать Кришну.
Even being in solitude, he can
Также Прабхупада
realize
осознавал
Krishna.
Кришну. Он
And also
давал
Prabhupada, he
преданным
was
такие
realizing
наставления
Krishna.
идти, проводить
He
Харинаму
would
по
give
лесной дороге,
instructions
просто по лесной
to
дороге там.
devotees
Нет
just to
домов,
lead
людей,
Harinama
никого.
along
И они
the
час прошли туда, час
forest
назад, не
path,
встретив ни единого
path in the
человека.
forest.
И также сказали Прабхупаде,
So they have
Прабхупада, мы
walked
там не видели
1 kilometer
никого.
one way, another kilometer back. They
2
haven't
часа
seen
прошли
anyone there.
Харинаму. По
And they
вашим
said, Prabhupada,
наставлениям,
we
мы
haven't
там
seen
не встретили ни
anyone.
одной
We were
живой
chanting
души. Прабхупада
Hare
говорит,
Krishna
нет,
mantra over
где
there.
вас
We haven't
слышали
seen
там
any
другие живые существа,
living
птицы,
entities there.
как
Prabhupada said,
летали.
no, no,
Они
the
вас
trees, they
слышат.
could hear you. Other
Как
living
пошли Харинаму,
beings, some
беспокойство
animals, they
всегда
could
это
hear
благо
you.
приносит в любом месте, при любых
It
обстоятельствах, не
always
только людям,
brings
но и всем
benefit,
живым
not only
существам.
to people, but to all living beings.
Вот. Такая практика тоже у нас должна быть. Ну,
So we also have to have this practice to chant Hare Krishna for other living entities, not for just people, not for your friends, but for the animals as well. You have to learn how to do it as well. Then it will be called a transcendental knowledge, not a sect. So if we go out and start chanting my mantra, we represent the spiritual transcendental literature, and if people look at us, they see this literature, they are already developing, they're already advancing. And in a year, even in a year, they will probably recall you, and they will approach even closer to Krishna, that they will have some questions, some interest, some curiosity. Some will even start thinking about the sense of life. So eventually it is happening in front of our eyes, very, very in a step-by-step fashion. But from the point of view of a human's life, it's quite a rapid process. So just imagine how much time we needed from the slavery times to the Euro standards. So back in time, we used to have slaves, right? But now this European culture, this laws, so it took thousands of years for this transformation. Now when we represent transcendental knowledge, a person can be transformed so tremendously in just one life. In an ordinary life, it usually takes thousands of years. The development of science, understanding of life and the world and the universe, the nature of a person, so many things are forgotten right now. And it took us so much time. It took us so much time to restore all these things. I think that it wouldn't have been impossible if we hadn't done all these things. Devotees had done all these things. Even in Shastras, it says that if you want to achieve prachaksha, the spiritual prachaksha, you have to live for so many lives, you have to do so many beneficial things, being so much religious, go through such a repentance and sacrifices, and here just walk down the street and year after year, you see that the atmosphere is changing. And people receive this knowledge better and better. In Ukraine, they represent Bhagavad Gita in supermarkets, on billboards or big TV screens. So people see Bhagavad Gita, the translation of shlokas, like a secret shloka. You see, it's being spread all over the city. You see, people like it. So you see, it's all happening right in front of our eyes. It's not like Jesus came and now it's been more than 2,000 years and people are still waiting for the other coming. So Christianity was spreading, had been spreading for 1,000 years, then it took another 1,000 years, and now we see the world changing. This is called Agyata Sukriti, because every living being is inclined to this. So who is not inclined to eat prasadam? Who is not inclined to think about his own bliss or beauty or richness? This is all Krishna. We know that this is all from Krishna. And everyone is inclined to caress as well. So we also have cats outside. So they are all adapted to all this environment. And in winter, there's like another layer of fur that they have. So they've been given this capacity by the nature. So we usually go out and the cat is following us. So we walk for the whole hour and the cat is following us all this time. Sometimes when it gets lost, it starts screaming. knowing, just kind of to wait for us. So we rub this cat, we give it some prasadam. See, they're inclined to communicating with us, sadhu sangha. So what is the way? You know what we do? We talk about Krishna, of course, we chant Maha Mantra, and the cat is following us. On the one hand, it doesn't understand anything, but from the spiritual point of view, it does understand something. Otherwise, it wouldn't be following us. Who doesn't like carrots, love, kindness? There are some exclusions, of course. Snakes are from this category. If you rub a snake, it will not appreciate it, of course. There are some exclusions, but usually it all depends on the spiritual power of a person. Lord Chaitanya, he could give Krishna's consciousness even to snakes. We have to be careful now. We only work with flies and cats, and we all get inspired from it. I've been inspired by the fly. When it has eaten prasadam, I was impressed. And I treat this fly in another way right now. I don't want to get this fly away. Let it live with us. Bhagavad Gita says that all the living entities are parts and parcels of Krishna. Even the fly, you see. We just give them a piece of Krishna, Krishna's consciousness, and they will transform very rapidly. See, we're all worried by fear, because the living being itself is constructed in another way. And it says here, this thing. So Lord Viṣṇu is very dear to all the living entities, because he's the master of the soul and well-wisher of all the living beings. So if we think this way, we're all liberated from these triple miseries, even the miseries of our mind. Maya gets into our mind. That's why it's really hard to overcome it. But if you perform devotional service, you can defeat your mind. If you have good japa, good sadhana, attraction to devotees will say everything's fine. And we feel fine because we accept it with faith. Everything that senior devotees say, sometimes I think, oh, I have this problem, that problem. Then you associate with devotees and everything's fine. Since you have faith in devotees, you don't feel any problems anymore. Just communicate, associate with devotees, talk to them. That's how Krishna defends or protects the mind of his devotees. Especially when we preach, no problems at all. When our mind is in the state of preaching, when the spiritual knowledge flows through our mind, even if something doesn't work out the way we had planned, we feel Krishna beat in our hearts. Sometimes we might be in a hurry, sometimes we get disappointed. Well, but when you start performing devotional service, the transformations that take place really fast, and people that get Krishna's consciousness, this impression, it stays there for a long time. And they start preaching even unconsciously. Now, half of the world preaches unconsciously. We can't even realize the way it works. Lord Chaitanya works through the hearts of all the living entities. We can't even understand it. So now let's read the purport. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 5.29, See, Prabhupada gives us text from Bhagavad Gita right away, so Shastras confirm each other. the sage who knows me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. See, Bhagavad Gita, it says, that's the formula of peace. Simply by understanding these three facts, that the Supreme Lord Viṣṇu is the proprietor of the entire creation, that he is the best well-wishing friend of all living entities, and that he is the supreme enjoyer of everything, one becomes peaceful and happy. For this transcendental happiness, the living entity has wandered throughout the universe in different forms of life and different planetary systems. But because he has forgotten his intimate relationship with Viṣṇu, he has merely suffered, life after life. Therefore, the educational system in the human form of life should be so perfect that one will understand his intimate relationship with God of Viṣṇu. You see, we only go through miseries. That's why people become so rude, cynical, even evil, mistrusting, because of the miseries. They had been looking for happiness in their children, in the society, in other people, but it hasn't worked out. Yesterday, Guru Maharaj told a story about Sankirtana. So he always asked devotees to tell him stories from Sankirtana. So when one devotee was spreading books out in the street, he saw one person and offered him books. And this person, he refused very abruptly. He said that nothing will help me. He said that he was going through very difficult problems, serious problems, so I don't want to buy these books. This devotee says, you see, that's the point. You need this book when you are going through some miseries, when you have some serious problems. So tell me what your problems are. So he stopped and said, yes, so I was at school, I finished my university, then I started working, I was making money, I got married, and all this I was doing just to make my mom happy. She wanted me to do all these things, but yesterday my mom died, understand? So that was a very negative effect. This person. So now this dear person that I had been doing everything for is dead, and sooner or later it happens to every person. And when this question arises, there's no answer, and I can find happiness because everything works out the way I had anticipated. Look, this book says that no one dies, the soul never dies. The body changes constantly. We call it death, but it's not death for the soul. The soul is immortal. Your mom exists as a soul forever. And the devotee started talking to this person, and this person, he has bought some books. His faith has awakened, and it has helped him. It has helped him to keep looking for the sense of life. If we have sense of life only in our relatives and our close friends, even there we will not find this sense, because sooner or later everything finishes. So what's the purpose of living further? Some people call it cursed life, like very cynical. Yes, people have a lot of sufferings. Now we see a lot of unsatisfied people, evil, blaming God, blaming everyone else. The first thing that it is said in Bhagavad Gita, it says that you are not this body. Stop your thoughts. You are not this body. You are a soul. People need to know that these days. as never before.
Все люди в критических ситуациях задумываются о Боге.
All the people in critical situations, they start thinking about God. They know that during the World War II,
Советский Союз,
there was some communist Soviet Union,
люди были атеистичные, была их
so
гордость.
people, they were very atheistic. They didn't believe in God. But some people would bring some icons to people because people were going to death every day. They would die every day, right in front of our eyes. And people, their faith would awaken. So the party allowed, back then, the communistic party, it allowed to bring some images, icons, images, where people were doomed to die. So this moment, a person might have this instinct as a music to his ears, to understand that I'm not this body, I'm a soul. These days, of course, we're also going through some miseries. Economical problems, the prices go up. Of course, we worry about them. So we have to hear the truth. The soul will hear. Anyways, every living entity has an intimate relationship with God. One should therefore glorify the Lord in the adoration of Shantarasa, or revive his eternal relationship with Viṣṇu as a servant in Dasya-rasa, a friend in Sakya-rasa, a parent in Vatsalya-rasa, or a conjugal lover in Madhurya-rasa. All these relationships are on the platform of love. Viṣṇu is the center of love for everyone, and therefore the entity, the duty of everyone is to engage in the loving service of the Lord. As stated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Bhagavad Gita, so in any form of life, we are related with Viṣṇu, who is the most beloved, the super soul, son, friend, or guru. Our eternal relationship with God can be revived in the human form of life. And that should be the goal of education. Indeed, that is the perfection of life and the perfection of education. That is, the education is designed for the devotional service, not to be a scholar. No, not to that. Being a scholar is actually a hurdle, a barrier. See all these scholars, they demonstrate their works, their knowledge that no one else understands. But the point is that we see these people are quite well educated with good memory, they're good analytics, and this is all appreciated. But the point is that we don't even understand what kind of conclusions they draw. Because scholars, they do not clarify anything in our lives. It's called scholarity. It does not explain anything, because bhakti, the devotional service, does not depend on either you are a scholar or you're not. It only depends on the desire of a person. You may be a scholar, but if you don't have a desire to serve to Krishna, Prabhupada said that education is designed to awaken this desire to serve to Krishna. We can't just get an academic education. Only under these conditions. So you have to parallelly perform devotional service. And the one who gives you this knowledge, he has to have bhakti. Devotees, they can give you this education. Stop racing each other in terms of being a better scholar. So yesterday we were associating. We were talking to a good yatra, so they've spread it more books in the following way. So some representatives of Sankirtana Yagya, like very experienced ones, and there were some devotees that were shy of even spreading the books. They didn't want to say that they had just spread 2 books. But now they just have these reports in front of the deities, but not in front of each other. So they stopped racing each other. They just tell about the results to the deities. We know that for someone, it's a stimulus, it's our nature, this competition, but for someone, it's not a stimulus. Because when strong people, they like racing or compete. But some other people, they do not like competing each other. For them, this competition is not very inspirational. So they have renounced the position of Maharaj, and they said, now only Yatra spreads the books. It's a common, it's a general result. So those who cook prasadam or transport prasadam books, this is all a common result. We will divide this result, we will spread this result to everybody else. That's what they did. So I'm not saying that everybody should do that. Probably that's a good stimulus, it's a good motivation. Probably it's good to see the heroes of Sankirtana. There's so many, we want to know how many. Yeah, it's a good thing, but on the other hand, Sankirtana, like a common Sankirtana, mutual Sankirtana. I remember Jadurani telling to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada wanted her to paint pictures, and the devotees that would spread pictures back then, other devotees would say that, why are you just painting the pictures? You should spread the books. You're not a devotee then. She was really worried about that. So she has asked Prabhupada twice about that. So first she asked Prabhupada, maybe I should spread books and start painting? Prabhupada said, no, your nature is painting. This is your nature. You should do that. And then second time, she felt that it might be better to spread books. Prabhupada said, no, you're painting books for Krishna. This is also Sankirtana. Sankirtana can have different forms. Everything that we do in a society in the spirit of Sankirtana, in the spirit of spreading. Some devotees ask, what am I to do? What is my nature? I don't know, because I cannot do this thing and that one. So please keep in mind 2 things. If something works out good, works out well, do it. There will be no questions, but you're not good and this or that. Just help those who spread Krishna's knowledge. This is the same Sankirtana. This is all one movement, one spirit of Lord Chaitanya, one mercy. Everything is very simple. If you do not know what to do, we'll look at the devotees that already are doing it. Sure, I look at successful devotees that do a lot for Krishna's consciousness, and I take over this spirit from them. Even if I don't have anything, I just get this mercy from them. If I can't do something independently, I just help the others. I just help devotees that can do something. If I manage to do something, okay, someone else can help me. So that's how we cooperate, because the Lord is a friend of all the living beings. not only the friend of the ones that can do some glorious things, some big things, but all the devotees that have even the slightest input in Sankirtana. It's about internal energy, not the external energy. Our feelings are bhakti. The Lord is only interested in bhakti, nothing else. Of course, this is bhakti. Even if we don't think of ourselves to be very successful, we help the others. We help other devotees. And Krishna will look at me and he will think, see, this person, he has even renounced his glory of fame. Now he's just serving to me. This person just wants to be a simple person, just wants to be my servant. So Krishna will appreciate it very much. Real devotee is a devotee of my devotee, so become a servant of my servant. So that's what Lord Chaitanya said. So Sankirtana is a great benefit, great benediction to any living being, especially for the people. So we will stop here and I will read the text again. The human form of life affords one a chance to return home, back to Godhead. Therefore, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in devotional service to the lotus feet of Lord Viṣṇu. This devotional service is natural because Lord Viṣṇu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the most beloved, the master of the soul, and the well-wisher of all other living beings. You see, a person gets a chance to return back to Godhead. Why only person? Why only human? Because we are given the gift of speech to learn to communicate with God, speech and intelligence to communicate with God. We are already given this. Animals, they don't have capacity of speaking, this opportunity of speaking. They will not probably have this opportunity to go straight back to Godhead, maybe in some exclusions, in some special events. But the person is, a human is given this opportunity to go back to Godhead. With the help of association with sages, reading Shastras, communicating with each other, to express our love, with the help of speech and thoughts and activities, by doing it consciously. So that's why every person has a chance to return back to Godhead. So now questions, please. Thank you, Caitanya Candra Caran, Prabhu. We'll make a short announcement now. Pramananda Prabhu, please.
Харе Кришна, спасибо большое. Дорогие зрители в YouTube, пожалуйста, направляйте вопросы через сайт aziyavairagya.info, ссылка в описании под видео. Зрители в Zoom, пожалуйста, нажимайте кнопку «Поднять руку» для ваших вопросов. Благодарю вас.
Я хотел вам некоторые моменты, а потом вот поднимают руки.
So, I just wanted to probably go through this verse again. So it says, the verse says that the human form of life is a very rare opportunity, and there are a lot of verses in Bhagavatam on this topic, specifically on this topic, where it says that the human form of life is very precious, although it's temporary. And the human form of life, as it says here, we all can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead because it's natural. It's a natural activity for our soul. Why? Because the Lord is our closest friend. He's the friend of all the living beings. And also have a desire to visit Almaty and receive darshan of the fly that lives in your kitchen. I think it's waiting for you. And today you've also recalled some cats that I saw there when I was visiting your place. I've read about an experiment.
крысу взяли, конечно, такой
There was an
жестокий
experiment.
эксперимент. Взяли
There's a,
крыс
recently, they've taken a
и
rat, some
поместили в
rats,
воду,
they've placed them in
и они
water,
начали тонуть.
and they started drowning, of
И
course.
они продержались на воде, на поверхности где-то минут 15.
So they were floating for about 15 minutes on the surface of water. They get drowned. And then they've taken some other rats. So those rats, and the scientists already understood that it will take these rats 15 minutes to get drowned. And the next rats were saved by people just right when they started drowning. And then the people put these rats in the water again. And the rats were floating for 60 minutes in water. Or someone even said 60 hours. So they were on the surface of water because they had a hope. Because last time they got saved by people. Because in this material world, there is no other hope other than the process of bhakti. Other hope except for Krishna. And for those that give Krishna to the others, they give the hope to the others. And I've also taken a great liking to when I've heard about one yatras in Russia that when they were spreading books, it was not an individual result, but a mutual result, a general result of the yatra. Because sometimes, how can people fight in the front without some support in the back? You can only fight if you have your back supported, covered. So people that bring books, prasadam, this is the spirit of Vaikuntha, the spirit of cooperation, where everyone can engage himself in doing something and be happy for the mutual result. Hare Krishna, thank you for this. So, Ilya, please turn your microphone on. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, dear Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for this splendid lecture. And I wanted to say thank you to Karabhajana Prabhu. And you were not here last week, and the atmosphere was different already. So please join us anytime you can. Thank you so much for your service. So last week we met with the teenagers, and now we are preparing a course for photo and video editing. There are some technical issues, how to set a camera, what footages to make, what material to prepare. But I've got a question. What image of the future can we give to the modern teenagers and children, of course? So this economical situation is quite complicated. Their parents are devotees, of course. So this is all not easy for them. It's quite difficult for them to get socialized. So what are we supposed to tell them about their future? To brighten their minds up, to give them this opportunity to think about the future. So these are just ordinary children, not devotees? So both devotees and not devotees, like a mixed group. Anyways, children from the circles where people are interested in either teachers or Krishna's consciousness. So you need to give them Krishna's consciousness. If they are already ready for that, they're prepared, the best thing that we can give them is the chanting of holy names. Engage them in playing on musical instruments. If they do photo or video editing, they're engaged in all these professional activities. So let them connect all these things with Bhagavad Gita or some higher spiritual values. Let them think about how to represent Bhagavad Gita in this way, using this language. Photos or videos. There are a lot of interesting opportunities, creative opportunities, but the basis should be Bhagavad Gita, and Kirtan gives them this positive state of mind, this happiness. Let them spread happiness. No one should spread sadness. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Damodara Priya. Hare Krishna, please accept my obeisances. Thank you so much. There was a great example about this yatra that started showing not individual but yatra's results on spreading of books. And for me it's a great result. It's a great example as well. So personally for me it will work. So I've just recalled one story, one episode from, actually it was an episode from a movie. When the sports team of USSR went to some competitions, and the coach started asking them, which team are you from? Dynamo and CSKA and all this, Soviet teams. So someone said, I'm from the team of the Soviet Union. And until everybody else said that they were from the team of the Soviet Union. And when they realized that they are from one team, they have conquered all the competitors. They got a victory. So when there's one team, you don't have fear. And I realized that I have some fear. When now even I'm trying to organize a children's program. Now, Yantra, what if I don't do something on a high level and people will start blaming me? So how do I overcome this fear? And maybe I should not even do anything if I have this fear. Fear should be elevated to the mode of goodness. In a spiritual sense, fear is love. This is one of the tints of love. When we love someone very much, there's always some fear. There's also some fear in there. What if I do something wrong? But in material world, this fear goes down to goodness, elevated to the mode of goodness, at least. Because when there's some phobia, and it's not good as well. So you're not supposed to be afraid of the critics from devotees. That means that this is not a spiritual atmosphere. We are criticized by our mistakes in a rude way. And of course, if there's some envy, it will not be pleasant. No one wants to feel this envy, some evil critics. If there's some kindness and benediction, we will accept it not as critics but as instructions. And the fear in the mode of goodness, it's a fear of, for example, not implementing your duties. Everyone should try to implement their duties, perform their duties on a high level, not because of the fear, but because of the responsibility. Because we want to elevate our life to the level of highest virtues. Well, it is a fear, but it does not harm us if it's a bliss. Thank you very much. Lakeshwari Mataji. Hare Krishna, my obeisances, dear devotees. Caitanya Candra Caran, prabhu. So quite often during Sankirtana, we meet some people that join us in the 90s. So yesterday there was a guy that we met. So he said that I've joined this movement with my egoistic purposes. I just wanted to develop some siddhas. I wanted to become a mystic. And people started criticizing, but he said people started criticizing me and I left this movement. He was brahmachari back then. But now he says that I'm higher than all this knowledge, than all this level. And then he started preaching even Christianity. So he came back to our movement from Christianity. And he said, so please send me lectures of Vedic culture. And I asked him about the books. He said, yes, I have the books, I read them. So maybe we should think about the people joining our movement. We should stop criticizing them. We should accept them with love. We should care of them. They haven't elevated spiritually yet, and it's really hard for them to progress. And this is Kali Yuga, right? We're all pierced by this age. We should stop and think about these newcomers, because Prabhupada brings them to us. And also yesterday I met a person, so he is 100 years old, and he said that I am known all over the world. So he's like a healer, like a natural healer. He scans people with his eyes and he knows what sicknesses they have. So usually that person was telling me some stories about healing some other people with all these special siddhas. And I asked him, so he told me that I will not even know when I die. My heart will be working, but my brain will stop working, and you will not even know when you die. So let's also develop some, mystical skills. We should open up some course on developing your siddhas. Even if flies eat prasadam together with us already, and they allow us to rub their heads. So this is all about mystical skills. So I think we know a lot of Vaishnavas that have given initiation to tigers and elephants and snakes. I think it will be easier with people. So Caitanya Candra Maharaj, you inspire devotees to go to kirtanas. And yesterday one devotee from some institute, she also came out and started preaching. She just joined us in January. She's a great personality. She looks really decent, very attractive. So we should learn from her. So Lalita Govinda Prabhu told me yesterday, so Almaty's Yatra has spread more books than the one in Moscow. I don't know, maybe they haven't counted all the books yet. 100 books more.
Я знаю, что Гита Джаянти в этот день Кришнайка распространила 300 Бхагавад-гит.
So now that Krishnaika, one of the devotees, she has spread 300 books in just one day.
Гиридхари Прабhu, давайте вопрос.
So Giridhari Prabhu, your question, please. Caitanya Candra Prabhu, all devotees, please accept my obeisances. Please accept my gratitude for the lecture and for the reminding that the devotional service, if we perform it, that under the influence of this service, our spiritual progress takes place very quickly, and all these worries, they go away. If we preach, we don't even notice these problems. They don't exist this moment anymore. If we don't preach, we have some problems right away. So, regarding flies and cats, we recently had a cat here, so we feed it with prasadam as well. And sometimes this cat comes to us in the evenings, standing outside the door, asking for prasadam. And now we have fewer mice, definitely. So you said today that half of the world preaches unconsciously these days. So I wanted to ask you to clarify it. How do we understand this phrase? Half the world preaches unconsciously. So recently I've learned another thing. So this information existed before, I just didn't know if it was true. So one of our politicians, he preaches being a vegetarian, so he keeps preaching. So he has learned about it a long time ago, and now he stays on the same path. So he says that meat is a harmful product. He has heard it from devotees, and he has heard about all the regulative principles, and he has agreed with all these principles. Prabhupada says that we have to explain and spread regulative principles at least. This is our minimum. So we have to give regulative principles to people. We have to tell people about it. So one of our politicians, his last name is Zhirinovsky. He's quite a famous politician in Russia. So you see, he has received this spirit from devotees. So devotees, they tell about it with great faith, see, because it comes from God Himself. And this faith, it transfers to people. When we say it, we understand that it's very important ourselves. This is an important thing for everybody. That's how we spread this knowledge. This is just one example. There are some other people that they are watching now and listening to our lectures. Hundreds of thousands of millions, maybe millions of people. They already start doing something. They might not even know about Krishna a lot, but faith awakens in them. So before the pandemic started, I had met some people that wake up at 5 o'clock. They do not chant mantra. They think themselves to be Orthodox or Muslims. But these people wake up at 5 o'clock. These are not just one or two people. They understand it's important. So they listen to the lectures or read books. They become vegetarians. They have their own sadhana, although they're not in Hare Krishna. They do not chant Hare Krishna, they don't have a spiritual master. They are in their own tradition, but they already practice it. So they have this enthusiasm, this confidence that other people don't have. So a lot of businessmen are interested right now where to make some offerings, where to send money. So it's very important to understand what you're sending money to. These donations that you do, you have to know where and how you do it. Also, being a vegetarian, it's very interesting, and also the timetable of your day, like the regime of your day, your daily routine. It's also very important, and people, they start understanding it. People start understanding all these things these days. You know, these things, they spread even beyond ISKCON, into the material society. This warmth of bhakti, it also spreads. Remember that example when a person is sleeping in a cold room and he doesn't understand why he feels bad while he's sleeping, and someone enters this room and sees this person being cold while he's sleeping, and this person starts stove, a radiator, for example. This person does not even understand what's happening, but he feels better, he feels good, even while sleeping. Not always people do understand what's happening, what other people say, why Hare Krishna and so on. They might not even understand it, but they get this warmth. They feel good. And this samskara, good samskara, it spreads even from them. It persuades other people. So these transformations are happening in this world right now. So you have to elevate to the level of the mode of goodness. Not even just goodness, but this enthusiasm, this faith that gets awakened inside of these people. Things that we hadn't paid attention to before now become important. And in the beginning of this lecture you said that, not devotees, they will not understand this verse, but anyways they accept it. Unconsciously. On the level of instincts. So recently one devotee has sent me a video, some movement, Muslim movement. They talk about good things, and this movie, it has collected very good words, phrases of Muhammad, when Muhammad was telling about the harm of meat eating, and the Muslims, they make these movies. Of course, they preach about the importance of health, about obesity, that people eat too much, they eat bad food, and then they draw a conclusion that they need to eat meat maximum one time a week, and it's better for them to be even half vegetarians. Half vegetarian. That's an interesting term. Well, yeah, matter of fact, Muslims are half vegetarians. They refer to Haris Muhammad that was criticizing those who eat meat. And he said that if you eat meat, you will not be even capable of praying accordingly. You see, that's what videos, what films we have right now, even from the Muslim world. You see, this terminology is quite intriguing. We didn't have these terms before, but now it's a very subtle term. And also this movie has one very famous prince from some Arabic countries. Very famous prince, he's vegan. So his father is a very rich person, sheikh. So this prince is preaching being vegan, and he fights against slaughterhouses. So this prince is young, very attractive. He sets a very attractive example for the youth in Muslim countries. I think we all have to have these movies on our telephones, because very often you have to face with Muslims and young people that follow Muslim culture very strictly, and it's very hard to talk to them. They're so convinced Muslims, they never take my books, no donations. So you have to talk to them in a very serious way, very accurately, of course. Good guys, but very convinced Muslims. Only Muhammad and that's it. If we have this phrases about being a vegetarian, even being a Muslim, yeah, I think we can ask Mataji Ananda Vrindavani. We have a specialist, and I think she could find something like this. She could give us this video. So Hare Krishna, thank you very much for the lecture. So I'd like to ask a question about the same topic, unconscious preaching. So I'm trying to preach in the internet as far as I can, and sometimes I encounter people that do the same thing, but from very impersonal positions. Sometimes I watch these people preaching, so they preach 4 regulative principles as minimum, but usually they go in further. They preach even more serious things, devotional service, and even chanting holy names, because some of them, they think that the Advaita is on a high level, so they preach bhakti with a great pleasure. And sometimes I don't even understand how do I treat this phenomenon. They are impersonalists. Maybe the final purpose is not very good, but on the other hand, they preach right things. And when my first initial spiritual experience, it was impersonal also. That have shown me to go on this path. If that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have joined devotees. On the one hand, they are quite useful, but on the other hand, it might be dangerous because they preach impersonal things. So how do I treat these people? What do I do? Yes, this is like a wave. If we preach Krishna's consciousness, this wave, it will arise. So one wave is Mayavada. There will be a lot of people that will be just copying. If we preach Krishna's consciousness in the material society, some mystics, some yogis, they will reflect on that. They will think that they will become God. They will start calling themselves God. Next wave, when people start understanding the philosophy better, they become impersonalists. They become authoritative impersonalists. So this is Mayavadi or impersonalism. And the third wave, when these people, all of them, they fall down. All impersonalists, they fall down sooner or later. So after the third wave, so they will refer to Bhagavad Gita, to Krishna again, if they continue their spiritual search. Most of the people, they will go through this. They will like this idea of merging with God. They because develop their imagination based on what they had heard from devotees. They had received this faith, this process, so their imagination, it inspires them, and they want to merge with God. But then they all fail. Sometimes it can take them 10, 15 years, someone sooner or later. But the movement, this movement, it becomes weak. The impersonalist movement, a personal movement. But then they will return back to the Godhead, to Krishna's consciousness. These are just my observations. So Prabhupada used to say about that. All impersonalists, they all fail. They all fall down.
Hare Krishna.
If there are not any more questions, I'd like to ask Caitanya Candra Prabhu to bless to our
Это Премананда Прабhu,
colleagues to our
который
devotees. They have the
Шримад
brothers to the Pramananda Prabhu.
вот
There is
закончили
always
вот
a moderator.
Приятно, давайте благословляйте, почему я один.
Гаура Премананде, Хари Хари Бол. И также у нас есть такая красавица Виктория.
And we also have a very beautiful
Все,
devotee.
кто видит,
Her name
они
is
говорят,
Victoria.
сколько ей лет? Почему она
Everyone that sees her asks,
я не знаю,
how old is
в вашей
she?
группе? Потому что
Why is she in your group? She's probably not even of full age. She looks a 13-year-old girl, but matter of fact, she's quite an adult person.
К сожалению, ее сегодня, по-моему, нет. Она стесняется где-то.
Unfortunately, she's not here today with us. She's probably too shy, but we will transfer her your blessings.
Пусть остается вечно молодой душой, да.
So we wish her to always stay an eternal young soul. Okay, thank you everybody. Have a successful marathon.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Шрила Прабхупада ки джай, его милость Чайтанья Чандра Caran Прабху ки джай, Нитай Гуру Премананде Хари Хари Бол. Также наши именинники ки джай,